Thank you for tuning in to this conversation with the Real Mindset Podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy the episode.
I was like, man, I was a little disappointed. Part of me still is just a little bit disappointed, but I mean, it's just a part of the game, though. When you're coaching, doesn't matter where you are. You can be at an HBCU, you can be at Power 5. It doesn't matter. You can be at Olivet.
Real talk.
When you have success, like, you just get bumped up. That's just how it goes. So, I just have to look at the big picture, understand what he got going on, and that's just kind of how I felt about it initially.
Definitely. Off jump, I definitely felt like, dang, that's bogus. Like initially when it first broke, but then you consider his coaching career and the fact that he's caring for his son and that journey that he's trying to get him to the pro level, it makes sense because, like we talked about off cam, what more does he have to prove in that division of football? Like, he dominated 2 years ago.
He dominated, and I think there could be more to prove though, but I don't know if he's able to do that just because of contractual obligations and conferences, and like there's just a lot more that goes into it. Like I feel like he did everything that he could do at a very high level, and he kind of reached the peak
with the resources he had.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and if we talk about everything but the salary, there's just a load of more stuff that he has access to at Colorado. Like, even from the city itself, he already said Boulder's like a beautiful city, whereas Jackson was a city under rebuild.
Right.
And they poured him and his staff and what they did, they poured millions into like that city in the last 2 years. So from a longevity standpoint, he could have done more. Like at least a draft class, not a draft class, what's it? Like a 4 years?
Yeah,
four years.
Freshman to senior.
That would have been ideal, but we still have to consider his coaching career. Because, okay, what if Shador leaves, his son leaves, and then they fall off, for example?
See, the thing is, I don't think that would have ever happened, really, though. This man had the #1 recruiting class in FCS. He had the #1 transfer class in FCS. You know what I mean? I think people would have kept going to Jackson State.
The transfer is going to be crucial. Because we already know his players don't come from Jackson State to Colorado. Yeah. But think about the people who are already at Power 5 schools. Who, like, maybe you're already in a Pac-12 and you're like, okay, USC could be leaving next year. I think UCLA could be leaving. But if you add,
I think they are.
Is Oregon not leaving?
Oregon is staying put for now. But I think they're supposed to be leaving too.
I think Oregon they ain't been that relevant the last couple of years.
Oregon is always relevant though.
They got cool uniforms.
Yeah.
But if I'm a top 10 player at Oregon, I'm considering transferring to Colorado. It's like, why wouldn't you?
If you're a top 10 player anywhere, you consider. You know what I mean?
Man,
because it's Deion Sanders, and he's at a Power 5 now. Deion Sanders at Jackson State already had so much pull. He already brought in so much money. He had Snoop Dogg on the sidelines in Jackson State. You know what I mean?
Wow.
He had College Game Day there. He had the national media attention is always on Deion Sanders.
And when I first heard it, I didn't think he was going to go because it was Colorado. And initially, I was just like, that's a corny school to go to. That's the first thing. I'm like, it's Colorado. Why would you go to Colorado?
Nah, it's not even the South.
Colorado. The South, though,
cold.
You know what I heard on First Take yesterday? You know the SEC has only had 4 black coaches in history. The SEC. So it's like we can give him backlash for going to the school that gave him the opportunity, but he dominated in Mississippi.
Yeah.
In SEC country.
Right.
No SEC school offered him a job. Like 4 black coaches in history. SEC. I don't say no more. How could there be 4 black coaches in SEC history? That's insane.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it.
It just so happens to be the country. It just so happens to be the South. We don't get into that, but like it's very interesting how those are connected.
But the thing is, on top of all that, that's where when you talk about boosters outside of like Texas, right? University of Texas, and Texas football altogether, Texas A&M is probably included in that as well because Texas,
It's in the realm.
Yeah, that's just what they do down there. But outside of the state of Texas, like, if you think about where a bunch of money is produced for boosters, for NIL deals, like all this stuff, primarily it's going to be in the SEC.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that is kind of ironic that you talk about a conference that is known to be like a powerhouse conference that it's either national champions or bust, and for whatever reason they can't seem to find a black coach that can get the job done.
Or they're not looking.
Ironically enough. You know
four in history, and that just makes me think like football has been around for decades upon decades. It started in popularity in college, so I don't know, man. I think we need to change that because Deion he can coach at the SEC level, I believe.
If he was in the SEC, could you imagine?
The people that would be coming to this LSU or
right. But the thing is, what I was saying before was, I don't think he wants to go to a school that has this strong football tradition either.
Yeah.
Because what he did at Jackson State didn't have a strong football tradition like that.
Back in the day, I think they did.
Maybe.
Oh, yeah, back in the day.
Walter Payton went there.
But either way, in recent years,
he had to build this
HBCUs.
thing from the ground up. You know what I mean? So I think if he would have had an opportunity at an SEC school, I don't think he really would have wanted to go to like an Alabama or Auburn or LSU or I could see him checking out like, yeah, I'll take the Missouri job. You know what I mean? I'll take the who else? I don't know, South Carolina or just some Vanderbilt, like
let me ask
some
this.
off SEC team.
If he owes on the spot, but if he owes Jackson State anything, what do you think he owes them? If he owes anything,
I think we kind of talked about this. I kind of agree with you. I think he could have stayed for a couple more years. I think he could have really showed that, listen, like, yeah, I'm at Jackson State, but guess what? Like, you know, our first big off season, we signed Travis Hunter, 5-star recruit. Second off season, we got 2 more 5 stars. Third off season, we got 5 stars, 10 4-stars. We might be the best college football team in the nation at this point, and we're in the FCS. I think that would have been nice to see, if anything. For the conversation to be like, I don't know, does Jackson State have a winning record in the SEC? But they're in the FCS, they're in the SWAC. But I think Jackson State might be able to compete in the SEC. I think he could have built
this team last year. Yeah, over time, I feel like he could have built it because we've been watching football a long time. When you watch Jackson State play, especially their defense, they just seem very fast, very strong, and very hungry. Like, you can't coach that.
Head and shoulders way better than anybody they played against all year.
Absolutely. So if that's the case, these are human beings. These are college athletes. At the next level, they wouldn't be the worst team in the 130-something teams Division I. Like,
but I will say, and I think Deion Sander said this himself. He was saying that the biggest difference between like a Jackson State and, you know, playing the SEC is that O-line piece. O-line, D-line.
I thought you was going there. And that ain't nothing to do with nobody's feelings. It has nothing to do with where you came from. This is beef on liver.
Right.
This is beef on fish at this point. Like,
that's the thing that he would, if he could have started recruiting top caliber O-line, D-line, the Jackson State could probably make a legitimate case and say if he would have stayed.
You put an Alabama,
I think
Michigan, Iowa line, Wisconsin, Jackson State.
So, you know what I mean? Like, and I think if he did owe anything to Jackson State, it would have been that. Couple more years, maybe not even, probably more than a couple. Probably take more than a couple to get all that. But just get it to that point where you can confidently say, and all for speculation purposes, like, yeah, Alabama, I know you won a national championship, but there's this team in the FCS called Jackson State that might.
It would have been a story. It would have been a story. It would have just been that, like, who's really the best type
who's
of vibe.
Really the best. Yeah. And Jackson State is stuck in playing the Celebration Bowl. They won by 100 points. And they might be the best team in college football, although they're playing for the FCS. And could you imagine all the scouts? I mean, he's already done a better job with that too, but could you imagine how many people would be going to these games if he had a bunch of 5- and 4-star athletes all over the field, though, not just in skill positions?
Let's end it with a projection, and I'll go first. We're gonna do what would the HBCU scene look like if Deion would have stayed a decade? Now then we're going to project what it's going to look like now that he's left for a decade. Okay, so if he would have stayed a decade, I do think he would have built an Alabama-esque program at Jackson State. I don't think there's no denying that, because there's been so many kids coming there that he would have just had way more talent than his level.
Right.
So with that dominance, I think the HBCU scene would have naturally just grew and grew and grew. And then it could have potentially been at a point where the talent, the concentration of top talent could have been swinging to the HBCUs over time. And not just Jackson State, because if Jackson State's dominating like that, you're going to get that person or kid who's like, I don't want to go join them, they winning. I want to go beat them. So they're going to go to Grambling. They're going to go to whoever. So that definitely would have, I think it would have started like a snowball effect where the talent would have, and then it spill over to basketball.
That would have been cool to see too.
You know, so.
Facilities getting better, you know what I mean?
Man, so it could have, would have, should have been that. You know, that's my take on it. But, you know, what could it have been if the 10 years would have happened?
If this would have happened 10 years, I can see the same thing. I think overall, the athletic, you know, the recruiting aspect of it all would have been much better. Deion Sanders, what he brought to the HBCU athletics was phenomenal, right? And yeah, you would have had those kids like Jackson State is absolutely dominating. You know what I mean? The HBCU feel like, I'm a dog. Let me go to Grambling. Let me go to Pine Bluff, like, you know, let me go to some other school and bring some of my homies with me, and let's go try to take them boys out. You know what I mean? And it would have made everybody else more competitive, and I think that would have been cool. But outside of that, if he would have stayed for 10 years, and honestly, I think this was going to happen, you know, if he would have stayed for 10 years, or the fact that he's leaving now, we kind of touched on this, the exposure for HBCUs has grown significantly.
In 2 years. In 2 years.
You know, like, I'll be honest, you know, coming out of high school, I didn't know much about HBCUs. I knew about Arkansas Pine Bluff. I knew about Lane College in Jackson, Tennessee, but that was it.
Shout out Lane.
Shout out Lane. You know, but outside of those two schools, I didn't know much about HBCUs. Now, everyone is more aware. Everyone gets to see what the campus is like on ESPN. Everybody gets to see, you know, the not the environment completely, but a glimpse of it. You know what I mean? And everybody gets to see that these are legitimate schools and universities. So I think the fact that Deion came in for these 2 years, the heightened exposure that came with that, like, I think overall, like, it may not help the athletic piece of it over the long run. Now that it's gone, but I think the enrollment and the students, you know, at least having people look at these as an option for schooling after high school is definitely taking a significant increase at the end of the day, though.
I like that phrase, heightened exposure, and that's what I predict. And we talking about back to reality. The 10 years going forward now that he's left, I do still think enrollment is going to continue to increase, like good percentages year over year over year, because. I mean, in the same breath, they do have to get those facilities funded. There's a lot that goes into that. You got to show you can pay it back. Or if this is just alumni donating, something has to happen.
Right.
Something has to happen.
That's a big thing, too. We talk about facilities at Colorado. Like, how do you think universities get their funding? It's alumni. You know what I mean? So it's just donations.
I'd have to look in state colleges as far as funding. Like, can Jackson State get the same funding as Ole Miss, or no?
Here's what I mean. I don't 100% know, but I do feel like a lot of that stuff is like donations. Like they may have some alumni that's like loaded with money. And they may say, what do you need? You need a new math building? Well, I like math.
Slap his name on it.
Yeah, put his name on it. You know what I mean? Like, here's $3, $4, $5 million. Like, let's go make it happen. You know what I mean?
I don't think the HBCUs are going to take as big of a step back as people think initially, because it's still a lot of noise. And then now the power is not concentrated at Jackson State, maybe it'll ultimately be spread out and even out. Like, it will take a long time for the talent to be concentrated in the HBCUs as far as athletics. It's probably unlikely to happen, but it could increase. Like, and I don't think the HBCUs are they're not talented. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's just they don't get the exposure.
Right.
There's the same wide receiver at Grambling, you know, a decade ago, probably could have played at a SEC school.
Right.
In that system with those facilities. They just didn't have the exposure and resources to do it.
Right.
So I don't know. It's about exposure. It's about TV deals and stuff like that. But as far as academics, enrollment, I do still think that it's going to increase. Like
I think it should.
Can't go backwards at this point.
I think it should. You know, I think like we mentioned before, it's just an exposure thing. There's so many people that used to not even really be exposed to it unless, you know, it was taught to them at school or the parents maybe went to a HBCU or whatever it may be. There's a lot of even black kids out there that just before didn't know. So now if you follow sports, if you like football, if you play football, you know about Jackson State. You know about the swag now. You know about HBCU athletics. And you know that that's also an option now too. I think if he didn't do anything else, right? Like he did that part of it, right? Although he did leave, maybe a little bit too soon for some, but he did a great job with exposure, though.
We'll see, man. It should be interesting. Hit one of these. Let us know in the comments what y'all think will happen in the HBCU scene in the next 10 years. I think it'd be very interesting to see how it plays out. But yeah, that's a wrap for conversation today. Anything else on that? Wrap it up.
I think I'm good.
It's gonna be interesting, man.
Skull
I'm a
Buffs.
Colorado fan now. Though. Colorado fan.
Skull Buffs.
Hey.